Hey, what's up guys, Rip here. So today we're going to be looking at some more bad news for games journalists. For the average person watching this video, it's probably not too surprising to see another big round of layoffs because games journalism over the past decade plus has really devolved from providing insightful articles on gaming related news and game guides and stuff like that to endless attacks and culture war related stuff where they have turned themselves into activists more than journalists, using their position to attack people they ideologically disagree with. It is definitely one of the more woke mediums out there, and that is reflected in their work, which is, again, devolved into something that doesn't even resemble games journalism whatsoever. Now, the latest group to be hit with a massive round of layoffs is, of course, Polygon. So Polygon's been around on the scene for a very long time now, but over the past couple of years, pretty much all they do is release hit pieces on various things they find problematic and release some of the most cringe-worthy articles you'll ever see on the internet. So here's the news, ironically enough reported by Kotaku, who's probably next. They say this: Polygon sold to Valnet and hit with mass layoffs. One of the biggest gaming sites around was just blown up. You can see down here, the video game website Polygon has been sold to click farm powerhouse Valnet, and much of its masthead has been laid off, Kotaku has learned. The sale was subsequently announced in a press release. Multiple staff members have posted online about losing their jobs or about colleagues now being out of work. So as you can see, they've been sold off to this Valnet, who's described as a click farm powerhouse. And you know what? Kotaku's not wrong here, even though Kotaku's pretty much guilty of the same thing. Valnet pretty much exists to grab as many of these various platforms as possible, get them under their wing, and then just produce as many articles as possible. Okay, quality doesn't matter, it's quantity. They just want to push out as many articles as possible to collect ad revenue and basically go from there and hope it's a financial success. Now let's see some of the reactions on Blue Sky, because where would you find the reactions to this news about games journalists other than Blue Sky? Because that's where all of them go. It's the biggest echo chamber for their kind. So you can see Chris Planty here saying, I no longer work with Polygon. If you're hiring, please consider the many talented writers and editors now on the market. Every one of them deserves a spot on your staff. I won't be talking more about the sale because I wasn't involved. Going to hang out with my kid, taking wins where I can. Here's another one saying, by now you've probably heard the news, Polygon has been sold to Valnet, and I, along with most of my wonderful colleagues, have been laid off. So it's very clear from the jump here that it's the majority of the employees who have been laid off as a result of this sale. And here's one more from Nicole Carpenter saying, I'll say more later, but I no longer have a job. I'm looking for work, as are so many of my amazing colleagues. I have lots of ideas and things I'd like to write. I'm really in shock. Now, I covered this post because of this final part right here. A lot of people acting very shocked that this happened to Polygon. In fact, if you just search Polygon on Blue Sky, you'll see a blob of tweets like this saying Polygon and Giant Bomb dead in the same week is just unfathomable. Polygon and Giant Bomb people, drinks around me at Summer Games Fest, from Jason Schreier. How the F does this happen to Polygon? God, this industry. So there's a lot of shock among the games journalists. They don't understand how this could have happened to Polygon. Well, to anyone who's a neutral observer of this entire thing, you're not surprised at all. I mean, the writing was on the wall. This is going to happen to pretty much every single one of these major networks out there for games journalism. They're going to get sold off and their employees are going to be laid off in mass. It's going to happen because no one cares about games journalism anymore. And that's a shame because they did it to themselves. There's no other people they can blame other than themselves. It's been, at this point, over a decade of nonstop slop and activism instead of providing insightful articles on the related subcultures. They have gone completely mask off politically. They've made it clear that that's more important than actually providing some gaming news and doing their job as they're supposed to. This is not surprising at all. And Polygon is just one of many where the quality of their articles is mediocre. And it's not just mediocre, it's cringeworthy. Like, some of the headlines they do are not only very abrasive and try to make some sort of a stance on various issues that they don't really have the right to be talking about as a games journalist, but also they just make some weird articles that just make you scratch your head and say, how did they think that was a good idea? So to celebrate all of what I just said and to really show it to you, I decided to go through Polygon's website and just pick out their greatest hits, some of the classics from their website, and I just keyword searched some relatively predictable terms that will show up in a ridiculous article, right? This took 5 minutes to pull up all these articles. I'm sure there's a lot worse out there, but let's get into it. Starting with this one, there was one big snub in the Game Awards nominations. Dragon Age the Veilguard, a game engineered to succeed at the Game Awards, did not. So they're saying, based on their gaming knowledge, that Dragon Age the Veilguard was snubbed at the Game Awards because it didn't win any of the big awards, which to anyone looking at this, it is not surprising at all that they did not succeed at the Game Awards. The only thing that was surprising is that the people working for the Game Awards, especially the journalists who control the overwhelming majority of the votes, that they didn't just go mask off and say, well, this aligns with us politically, let's make it win. But it did not, and I guess this person at Polygon is surprised. This game was not engineered to succeed. The franchise was, but this game was not. It hyper-focused on the characters' identities and getting into identity politics and all of that stuff, and having a bunch of obnoxious messaging throughout the game, and overall just, it was a boring story. There's nothing to it. But let's look at other articles. Like this absolute hood classic, Disney's hottest animated animal characters ranked. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I thought this was a meme. I thought this was like a made-up article. And that's real. It's right on their website. And they actually go through all of the animals from Disney. And it's wild. This is games journalism in a nutshell. This is peak journalism right here. Like, if you want to do this sort of stuff, you're a little weird and you want to make some sort of a list like this, nobody really can stop you. But is this really what Polygon should be doing? And also, Polygon, by the way, is very judgmental in their articles about people who enjoy Japanese-style games and stuff like that, and also enjoy playing attractive female characters, as we'll see in a little bit. But here's another one, a game changer right here in 2017, saying, gaming's racist and sexist personalities aren't a new threat to children. Technology changes the fears, but not the strategies, with a picture of JonTron here, so obviously making him one of the faces of this racist and sexist issue targeting children. So down here they say, in quotes, "Do you watch PewDiePie?" I asked my oldest son. He shook his head no, but then asked why I would even bring it up. Because he doesn't understand why jokes about genocide aren't funny, I explained. My son goes to a German language school, and this wasn't the first time this particular topic has come up. I don't think PewDiePie is an anti-Semite as much as I think he's a rich white guy who doesn't understand that anti-Semitic humor isn't the best way to make a point. PewDiePie is thoughtless, and his wealth and built-in following insulates him from having to look at any of his beliefs very hard. I wouldn't be upset if my children were fans of his, but I would try to explain why shock humor is lazy and more likely to get you in trouble than to get a laugh. And then they move on to talking about JonTron, which that whole controversy with him is just insane. Basically saying that he's parroting white supremacist beliefs and stuff like that. It's just classic Polygon complaining about PewDiePie. I'll ask you, where's PewDiePie today versus Polygon? Well, one's living a happy married life and experiencing the first time being a father, and Polygon is Polygon. Yep, that's pretty much what's going on here. Let's look at some more classics. Wizards of the Coast is addressing racist stereotypes in Dungeons and Dragons. Changes to the Drow and Orcs and more diverse hiring. So in case you're not familiar with this controversy, I covered it many years ago, but Wizards of the Coast was pressured by a bunch of activists to change and censor some of the monsters in their IP, because those people, the non-racist, the progressive people, they looked at these monsters and said this reminds them of black people. Therefore, Wizards of the Coast is racist. Try to wrap your head around the fact that these progressive people look at monsters in a video game and their first thought is black people. Very, very strange. It's pretty much a self-admission there. But here's another one. The fascist subtext of Attack on Titan can't go overlooked. The story's twist exposes the ugly side of the manga and anime. I didn't even know they jumped in on this whole Attack on Titan is promoting fascism trend that people try to do about 5-6 years ago, but that's not too surprising given the fact that it's Polygon, of course. Here's another banger. Is this a Pulitzer Prize winner? It has to be. Understanding Ugandan Knuckles in a post-Pepe the Frog world. That sentence will give you whiplash, dude. Yes, they actually sat down and went through this to try to compare Ugandan Knuckles to Pepe the Frog to understand whether or not Pepe the Frog is actually a hate symbol or, acceptable or not. Let's read a little bit. So they're talking about Pepe the Frog, and of course, they say this. Pepe was co-opted and weaponized by alt-right groups, a radical movement that propagates racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, and other hateful ideologies, and used as a form of harassment towards those on the opposing side of the political spectrum, and hit mainstream recognition during one of the most tumultuous political periods. Pepe represented the total power a character meme could yield. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're talking about. When you post Pepe the Frog, if you're watching a Twitch stream and you're posting something or a variation of Pepe the Frog in response, you're actually using an alt-right dog whistle. They tried this. They tried really hard. They actually got the ADL to designate it officially as a hate symbol, but people just laughed at it, and it's still very popular to this day, obviously. But they go on to say, like, wait a second, we're enjoying this Ugandan Knuckles thing, and there's that whole, like, do you know the way thing that people were saying. Like, that doesn't make the character racist, but Pepe the Frog is still a hate symbol because, I don't know. But anyways, terrible article. This was a painful read. Here's another one that got them a lot of flack about 2 years ago. Link is a gay icon, and Zelda fans know it. The Legend of Zelda's queer themes are more than just subtext. So they're just claiming that Link is gay, which is a wild and outrageous claim, and really they're just kind of projecting their own desires onto this character that's in no way portrayed as this in the series, but they're really reaching to do this because it serves their narrative and their desires, and also they're implying that if you don't believe this, you wouldn't be a Zelda fan. Very obnoxious. But here's another one. Grand Theft Auto 5's misogyny is a problem its creators must finally address. Dated back in 2014. I'm sure that went really, really well. But of course, there's more stuff like this. Sexism in League. E-girls, supports, and pretty champions. Maybe, just maybe, we should stop caring so much about what women do in video games. Well, I will counter you back on that one, Polygon, and really all of these games journalists. I think maybe you should stop caring about what people enjoy, including men enjoy when they're playing video games, because that seems to be all they're doing. They're trying to police the type of content that people can consume and the entertainment that they enjoy. In fact, here is a great example of their hypocrisy side by side. You can see one article talking about Skullgirls, where there was an update getting rid of some fan service from that game and wristbands or armbands that looked a little too close to a certain political party from Germany at one point. And of course, a lot of this was blown out of proportion because, yeah, oh my gosh, it turns out the bad guys in the game are actually modeled after bad guys in real life. There's actual bad guys in a video game. Holy moly. And also, of course, the fan service being censored also removed digital copies from people, or they took away the digital copy. So they are quite literally taking things away from people as a result of this update that blew up in their face. But they're saying here, censorship good, fan service bad. But then they made an article about Genshin Impact saying Genshin Impact covers up the booties of its boy toys. And they were upset about censorship of the male characters. Very interesting. Here's another one. Anita Sarkeesian looks back at Gamergate. The game industry's silence was shameful. Written by Anita Sarkeesian. This is the old OG Gamergate days. Anita Sarkeesian was at the helm of her movement. She is a very deceitful liar, and she is someone who's caused immense damage to the gaming industry in the direction it was going back about a decade ago, focusing on censorship and attacking developers for not being inclusive enough or not focusing enough on women and what they want in gaming, and also labeling anything they possibly could as misogynistic and any other phobe or ist she could think of. But it's ironic that she was still with them as close as 2020, and she wrote an article basically talking about her own experience in the third person. Interesting to say the least. But here's another one from recently. If you're thinking this is all stuff from 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you'd be wrong. They wrote this article days ago. The Last of Us's post-apocalyptic homophobia reveals its shallow setting. The story about tribalism that refuses to think about tribalism. Yes, there's post-apocalyptic homophobia in The Last of Us, because that is the main takeaway from this recent second season. Absolutely insane stuff, but you shouldn't be surprised. And I also want to point out this little section here shared by Grums, where you can see this, I think now former Polygon writer, well, at least they're all former now, right? Saying they find it extremely difficult to believe that this was accidental, but who knows? And this was referring to Stellar Blade in a short-lived controversy they had where there was this graffiti next to the R shop. So it said hard R. And of course, these are Korean developers who made this, and this was clearly just a coincidence. But this Arthur guy was going with the narrative, and oddly enough, as you can see, they have some of the greatest hits of all time in games journalism. Bayonetta 2's blatant over-sexualization puts a big dent in an otherwise great game. I thought she was liberating. Interesting how they flip-flop on Bayonetta. But here's another one. A male character criticizing a woman for going into battle with her shirt hanging open is the snake eating its own tail of video game sexism. Wow, that's a lot of word salad right there. But checking in on this individual, I want to share this because I've never seen this before on Twitter. In many years of using the platform, AGs is temporarily unavailable because it violates the X hateful profile policy. And this is real. I've never seen this before. You can't even view their profile. I mean, you couldn't anyways because they've gone private since. I've never seen this label. Like, you can think of the most diabolical users on Twitter sharing the most disgusting, hateful, dangerous stuff ever. I've never seen this label applied to anyone else but this account, and how they earned it, I have absolutely no idea. But of course, the confusion and delusion of games journalists and their allies is continuing here. Khalif Adams, who's always involved in all this stuff, says, seeing brilliant people at Polygon lose their jobs while grifter content creators are getting seats in the White House press corps isn't fantastic. Well, not for you. And many things to point out here. If they were so brilliant, why did they get shut down? Because if they were so brilliant, making such good content, wouldn't people be interested? The market chose, and they didn't choose them. And of course, as usual with anyone who is a part of these related movements, the seething about content creators continues. I said it recently about some of the English voice actors and also some of the anime and manga localizers, but games journalists and their allies are the same way. They absolutely hate content creators. They are seething in jealousy every single day. Every single person that's not aligned with them politically is a grifter. They won't accept or even give any of their opinions a chance as a result. And it's just showing itself once again right here. But that's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys next time.